Looking back at my storm chasing experience during the spring of 2020, it somehow had a certain familiar aesthetic. So let's just roll with it. Every year, in the month of May, on the plains of the United States, a war is fought between the end of winter and the beginning of summer. It's around this time that wintertime strong flow aloft meets up with new summertime moisture coming up from the Gulf of Mexico. And it's this month that you pay the most attention to the weather on the plains. 2020 has a sick sense of humor, and for storm chasing, it was no different. I love to be out a day early, before a series of severe weather events are forecasted to take place. But May 12 would present me with a raging thunderstorm on the horizon in the Texas Panhandle that would suddenly collapse just as I arrived. Reliably, storms on the high plains provide sunset fireworks, even as they peacefully dissolve away. With all the unknowns of the time, in the midst of lockdowns, sleeping in the cramped back seat of my pickup seemed like the safest and sometimes only option. Storm chasers have an old saying, when it's May, you chase. Watching water vapor by myself is an inherently socially distant activity.
Good morning.
Well, this ain't gonna work. But that also means missing out on all of the fun that would normally happen organically after a chase.
Get a little Axl Rose vibe going for this chase.
May 13 initially had some high potential. However, with the polar jet stream shunted further north than anticipated, and a slight lack of surface moisture in place, there was now little chance any storms today would produce tornadoes. But that doesn't mean I won't have any fun regardless. Now, lots of storm chasers will joke about structure, or structure with friends, or it was structure all along. But hey, you take what you can get. Being outdoors, away from crowds, and very quick trips inside of gas stations while wearing a mask all contributed to a safe spring of storm chasing for myself and many others. With my primary target failing miserably, my attention was shifted to an incoming Meso-scale convective system, or MCS, which was pushing up from the southwest.
Mothership Boeing segment coming. Mothership.
More intense versions of an MCS can sometimes be responsible for large-scale wind damage, but this one wouldn't pack much of a punch. Once inside one of these shelf clouds, you're inside the whale's mouth, a part of the storm in between the inflow-outflow interface and the precipitation, which makes one feel like you've entered the gigantic mouth of a great fish. After that, it's time to just enjoy the sunset illuminated backside of the MCS. Foreign colors and fantastic textures take over the sky. But being in red clay country of Oklahoma just sweetens the deal. I don't need a tornado to be in my happy place. Even still, that's the goal. Far to the north, a rotating storm obliviated itself in the evening twilight. Even bus days can really keep my cameras busy. Even in a bad year like 2020, when it comes to tornadoes, which we just haven't had many of, there are many other wonderful things that can be seen out on the plains. I mean, have a look around me. Structure, as we call it, or storm structure, is the definition that a storm might have under certain conditions, even when those conditions don't lead to tornadoes. Now, you might see a bit of an irony in the fact that some non-tornado days end up being the best structure days. And that's not entirely by accident. Capping inversions, which can result in killing off a storm, will also sculpt a storm into really strange shapes like motherships, stacks of pancakes, or even sometimes barber poles. Well, so how's this for a new routine, eh? A pillow. Trusty truck pillow. This is actually just blocking me from laying on the seatbelt, to be honest. And a pile of camera and laptop gear. My wipes, rubber gloves, and a mask. And yes, I do look ridiculous. And yes, everyone has noticed. Yep. Well, that's pretty much the grand tour of the truck. Breakfast. I was able to find various roadside parks and truck stops to stay at overnight. It's a peaceful experience, but not a very comfortable one.
This knife overboard? If you don't like Honeycrisp apples, shame on you.
May 14th got off to a very late start. Storms in northwest Oklahoma didn't fire up until just before sunset. I would just love to see more stacked plates come out of that.
I'm telling you, there's nothing. It's a little bit of a risk that you're not going to see something, but on days like this, when you have the EML and you have some kind of trigger, something to make it go, you get a view like this, I'll tell Kansas to fuck off every time.
Normally, filming in the dark is pretty difficult. Luckily, this storm wasn't shy at all. Yeah, I mean, we want to get over there and then over there. The sun's going to kiss it no matter what. The geometry's fine, because this is south.
Yeah,
and the sun's north of it.
Blocking it. That's what I mean.
It may block our view from here.
Right.
But if we get far enough in front, then we'll be back in business. Yeah. But I mean, we're nearly Mothership territory anyway, so if you want to move, we got a little bit of sun.
Dude, look at the structure developing.
I hate to leave it, because like, I say we roll.
I hate to leave the spot we're in.
I know.
Because we're elevated up slightly over everything else. And we know, okay, here's something to consider. River over there. River.
Even better, it barely moved. Sometimes less than 1 mile per hour. You could just sit in a lawn chair and watch. So I did. I'm surprised at how tight that looks. And it's even got an RFD around it. Man, if that cranks into something, that would be the ultimate you.
Oh, yeah.
Holy cow, nah, that's not real, is it?
Dude, I think it's something.
We have just enough lightning to like just... That's just gorgeous. I might have to increase the exposure for you. Feel the inflow. Dude,
Looks like RFD rapid now. Bear with me, bear with
keep
me.
doing that, Storm. Holy cow.
I'm gonna try to freeze frame it.
That might have been an appendage just then. That's a big RFD coming around. I don't know, man. It might be tornadoing in there.
Very possible. That rapid was very quick.
Oh! Yeah, we need to go. Later that evening, I'd attempt to capture sprites above the storm. And I finally did. My first sprite capture. This was not an impressive specimen at all. And soon you'll see why as I progress through these spring 2020 storm chases. Well, good morning. It's Friday, May 15th. Today we have an enhanced. The enhanced, however, is for hail and wind. I can't remember which, actually. We have a lot of instability progged for central Oklahoma. Can't talk. That instability is measured in CAPE, which is today going to be on the order of 5,000 joules per kilogram. Unfortunately, there isn't going to be that much in the way of kinematics available. Or in other words, the wind turning with height like we've had with every day this week is going to be kind of sucky. And well, you've seen what I've seen so far, so I feel not terrible about that. Just to give you an example, I'm looking at a sounding right now that shows an effective bulk wind difference of 37 knots. Well, you need about 35 to make a supercell, so that's bare minimum. I'm going to go through some more models here, and I'm going to make a decision on where to go next. Right now I'm in western Oklahoma again, and actually the same spot I was yesterday. Seemed fine. This next chase would bring me through the Wichita Mountains. As it would turn out, a complex of storms left over from the night before, way up in Kansas, would invade from the east in the form of cold outflow. Normally, chaser convergence on the same storm system quickly leads to social gatherings. This is what some of that looked like this spring. Just a few people and some masks. That cold outflow would arrive, completely destroying the instability, and therefore most of the severe weather potential and chances for photogenic tornadoes. And so we just watched as it quickly marched over the unstable warm sector. I'd head home after this day and take a break, feeling quite discouraged. 2020 is not a year where you should ever once think it can't get worse, or what else could happen. I should know. I said that a lot back then, and look where it got us. Well, good morning, and it's another lovely morning out on the high plains through western Colorado on this Thursday, May 21st, 2020. And I'm really getting sick and tired of the 2020 part right now. This season has been so strange. There's so many things to like about how the weather this April and May has gone as far as moisture and seasonal forcing and things like that. And yet, here we are, putting up goose eggs on severe weather setups that seem to just downtrend right at the last minute over and over and over again. But here we are finally looking at a setup in Kansas, which usually is good luck for me. But right at the last second, everything looked so great last night in the days leading up to this for, a single storm to fire where you want it to in a decent environment that could produce tornadoes. It wasn't going to be this major outbreak with wedges everywhere, It was going to just be a good tornado day. It's one thing when it's my fault. I can at least say, hey, you didn't chase the right storm. Hey, you didn't, play that chase correctly. You were out of position. You struggled with road network or didn't navigate properly, or you didn't do the forecast right. But no, when there's just nothing to work with, it just sucks. It just sucks. When you just go into a day, you're going to chase something and you just know there's not going to be tornadoes. You're just like, what am I doing? Okay, yeah, I've seen some cool stuff in the last couple of weeks. I'll probably see some cool stuff today. It's just kind of like going to a really fancy, expensive restaurant and only eating a chicken salad or something. And what's the point? What's the fun in that? Why bother? I'm gonna try and keep my spirits high and just be there. Just be there. May 21 would be held back by a slight weakness in the surface moisture and weak winds aloft. This really was the story of the spring. The most likely scenario would be linear storm modes and just generally disorganized severe storms. That said, in many ways today would overperform those expectations.
Tornado warning. Wait, look at that, look below.
While there was a slightly better tornado I could have gotten if I had just been in a slightly better position that day, I did catch this brief surface circulation with a funnel aloft, but I'm not even going to bother counting it. This storm would quickly transition into another MCS, with therefore far less tornado potential, which was expected this day. But take a look at that greenage. At this point, it's time to stay ahead and check all of the neat little shelf clouds and interesting textures this MCS would produce. But it gets even better.
So many interesting things happening all at once. There's a gustnado behind me. Over here is a new storm forming, a new supercell, possibly later. And then over here, we've got a sculpted supercell. And this is all part of the MCS, or mine storm, that's producing that gustnado. There's a little bit of a mesoscale still right there. That's it.
Multiple times we'd catch suspicious lowerings as new storms would form ahead of the line, momentarily producing funnels before getting absorbed into the MCS.
I'm thinking it is.
It wasn't even worth trying to pursue these funnels. They were gone as quickly as they formed.
Wow, that even looks like a wall cloud over it.
Gustnados are straight-line winds that will sometimes lift and twist dirt and light debris far up into the sky, and can sometimes be mistaken for tornadoes. This gustnado would persist longer than any other I've ever seen before.
I think we can go way east and get in front of them. Probably get a great view of this.
Two new supercells would form to the south and east, and there was just a narrow moment of time to get a closer look before the storm complex to the north would dip south and absorb these as well.
It's just, I don't know, it would need to evolve quite dramatically from how it looks now for tornadoes. No reports. Oh, that Meso is cranking now.
everything at once. Holy cow. This just goes on and on and on and on. And then there's a supercell there. The expected mergers took place, but not before creating one of the most chaotic storm structures I've ever seen. Unfortunately, it's beginning to get too dark to film, and most of my cameras and phone are straining to take in the amazing sights. But this lighting is perfect for time-lapse photography. My buddy Mike Snyder captured an inside view of the storm from the opposite side. Oh yeah. Near Moscow, Kansas, this wonderful supercell would make a final go at producing a tornado. It may have briefly touched down, but if it did, it was hard to tell in this very low light scenario. It's not moving anywhere, is it? Oh, it's not touching down yet. Video of it. That's gonna do it again. Are you ready to move up already? That evening, I'd head well south and west of the storm complex, where I'd photograph several more sprites. Way brighter and more interesting specimens than my first one from a few days earlier. Cries from a nearby coyote made for a spooky experience. I'd end up regretting that I skipped out on May 22nd, a day in which other chasers would see a few pretty decent tornadoes along the Red River in North Texas. But May 23 was the day I thought all of my not-so-great luck and 2020's lack of good, fully condensed tornadoes would come to an end. This time, snow and condensation blowing off the Sangre de Cristo Mountains of New Mexico would result in mid-level cloud debris that would ultimately kill off the storms meant to fire up in northwest Kansas. It's a shame, because this is right in my favorite area of the plains to storm chase in, and any storm that would have held together would have likely produced photogenic and long-lived tornadoes. Instead of full-blown supercells, there'd be a sad cowboy boot of despair just clinging to life. Even still, a brief, yet again uncondensed landspout would form. Thanks, Mr. Boot. Yet another example, storms on the high plains die pretty. But May 23rd would offer an even more impressive consolation prize. John and I would get reports of sprites being spotted over a large MCS traversing through the Nebraska Panhandle about 100 miles to the north. I was planning to stop and attempt some more sprite photography anyway, but hearing about people seeing sprites even before the sky was fully dark is extremely unusual. So let's check it out.
Sprites are relatively recently discovered, right?
87, I would say, is when there was first like a scientific confirmation.
Right,
yes.
someone was like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, and acknowledged it. But I mean, camera technology is really, there were a lot of anecdotal, yeah, I saw this weird thing above the storm. Didn't know what it was.
Right. And saw this red. Sprites are one of those things that even if you're sitting watching a storm, if you might miss it. Like if you're not specifically watching for sprites.
Exactly. Holy shit!
Dude!
You should have seen it on the camera!
Oh,
holy
God.
Dude, it was
Wow.
intense as hell.
Woo! That's gonna be
Oh.
a hell of a shot. I would say again halfway between the anvil top and those 2 stars. Oh my God, dude!
Did I just? I'm still recording.
Those were up there too. They were like
way up.
Way up.
Okay.
This is definitely getting closer to us too.
Is it?
Yeah.
That. I don't think I was pointed in the right spot. How often do you get an MCS like this with perfectly clear sky?
Yeah.
See those? You see it, right?
Well, right, and it's kind of. Oh,
Bam!
Wow.
That was a full on.
Did you get that?
Yes.
Oh, hell yeah.
I hope it's in frame though. That's the only problem.
The activity.
Wow.
Wow.
Here we go. All the Sprite photos I did.
Oh.
That one wasn't even an intense one.
No, that was a nice one though.
Be like really deliberate.
Maybe I'm going crazy, but I'm seeing
There
all
was one.
kinds. Yeah, above this right one. I mean, they're almost constant right now.
Yeah.
You see it again?
Sprites have been hiding in plain sight forever, having only been confirmed to exist just 30 years ago. But thanks to huge improvements in camera technology, the internet, storm spotting, and chasing, Sprite photography is quickly becoming commonplace. A mix of patience, the right storm, the right camera gear, and lots of practice can turn someone like myself from a Sprite newbie to a Sprite whisperer in just over a week apparently. In a single season, I went from capturing my very first Sprite to capturing hundreds, and now I have lots of future plans with these things. They can become yet another addictive hobby.
Good morning on this lovely June 7th, 2020 under beautiful blue skies in central South Dakota. I don't want to scare it off by like telling you a whole forecast and then saying here's what's going to go wrong and here's what's going to go right. Instead, I'm going to talk about my first storm chase, my very first real storm chase, because it happened right in this same area. And about 10 years and a couple of weeks ago to the day, I was out here with my brother. I had never chased in the plains before, kind of decided to do this on a whim. I didn't know how to forecast. Pretty much all the information I had to go by was the wording and the graphics put out by the Storm Prediction Center. So I was effectively what they call an SPC chaser, which it means to just follow someone else's forecast, attempt to do your best to interpret it, and then just show up to an area, look for things to show up on radar, and then go chase whatever you see on radar. It's not a great way to go, and I'll tell you why. The day before, it looked like things were going to be around the Sioux City, Iowa, Omaha, Nebraska area, and we were coming from the east out of Michigan. We had left the night before. We wake up to the forecast having shifted from Sioux City and Omaha over to probably about Yankton or Mitchell, South Dakota. That just meant we had a little bit further to go. So we stepped on it, and we're blasting down Interstate 90 across Minnesota, past Sioux Falls, and we get to Mitchell, South Dakota. We stopped to, I think we were getting wiper blades. Something wasn't right with one of the wiper blades on the car. And it's probably 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and a little blip on radar had shown up way to our north, hours away. It was by then that we had realized that the storm of the day wasn't going to be down in Mitchell, South Dakota. It was going to be up way north in town of Bowdle, South Dakota. And for those of you familiar with 10 years ago and a few weeks to this day, and Bowdle, you know where I'm going with this. I didn't see any tornadoes that day. It was probably one of the most epic tornadoes in South Dakota ever, and it's really probably a lot of storm chasers' top 10 tornadoes or better. And I've learned very quickly that day that I need to forecast. You can't just rely on somebody else's information full of blanket statements meant to encompass a broad region or area, or so that kind of blanket language combined with thinking being in an area is going to be good enough. It wasn't good enough that day. And so very quickly I went from thinking that this was easy to thinking I need to learn how to forecast for myself. And so the forecaster in me was born that day. To be honest, I didn't do any better the next 2 days because I really didn't have time to learn anything. But it did pay dividends a week later. I'm going to be in the same area as 10 years ago. In fact, I'm going to be driving right through Bowdle, South Dakota on US 12 here in a minute. So it seems fitting that on the nearish 10-year anniversary of that day, The SPC forecast has a 10 hatched risk, and it's very broad. 10 years later, and I don't feel any better about my forecasting skills because it's 2020 and that's what 2020 does. The first rule of Dunning-Kruger Club is that you don't know you're in Dunning-Kruger Club. My final target area would put me just west of Fargo, North Dakota, but everything went to shit real fast as storms would form on the wrong side of the front where tornadoes would be unlikely, and many other non-tornadic storms would form, all fighting with one another. Those were also unlikely to produce photogenic tornadoes. A small chance, however, remained just across the border in South Dakota, and I had to race right back to the area I already was that morning. The storm I picked produced a small tornado just before I arrived, and then again just as I was setting up. After that, it was done. A nearly 1,000-mile round trip through the northern plains in a single day, and only some low-hanging scud to show for it. Why do I do this again? Western Nebraska, also known as the Sandhills, have a bit of a reputation. A wild, rugged landscape, few roads, few people, little cellular reception, and only about 2 radio stations. So hearing a chase weather appropriate tune on the airwaves just before storms fire up in the Sandhills is always welcome. A pair of tornado-warned storms formed to the south, but as has been the case all spring, the tornadoes they would produce would be short-lived, uncondensed, and nothing much to write home about. But once again, the storm structure would be top-notch, with one of the best Mammatus displays I've seen in years. I'd catch one of those brief uncondensed tornadoes as it approached. It would be this storm's last attempt before losing strength and heading deep into the roadless void to the north. Even without much in the way of big action and the challenging road network, this was a wonderful storm chase nonetheless. Even still, I'm left in a bit of a state of melancholy. But hey, another Sprite. When weather becomes more active near the Rocky Mountains, storm initiation is largely driven by upslope and terrain features. This can lead to some special photo opportunities with mountain scenery, unique storm structure, and behavior. On May 20, this developing line of storms in Wyoming looked a bit like an armada of battleships over a great grass sea. To the south, just across the border into Colorado, an especially colorful set of thunderstorms with intense lightning would steal the show.
That is a pretty storm, man.
June 3rd was really just a travel day to get into South Dakota for some upcoming storm chasing events. But there were some rotating storms over unique terrain to watch along the way. Unfortunately, a handful of Native American reservations were closed to non-tribal or non-essential travel due to the pandemic, so getting close to storms in part of South Dakota might prove a bit tricky. It didn't matter though, this rotating storm would collapse due to a lack of deep moisture. But storms in the high plains die pretty, if I haven't mentioned that already. June 4th would have me starting out near the Black Hills.
We'll have a few more attempts. There was an attempt.
It's fine.
Totally cool with
If
that.
he wants to wait until 3, I'll sit here.
Western South Dakota is another one of my favorite areas to chase in, and today would not disappoint with landscape and storm structure. Though I'd quickly get baited north to an ongoing supercell in a pretty healthy environment for tornado potential, or at least I thought.
Ultimate bummer moment is sitting and waiting for minutes and minutes and minutes for a flag person to let you by. Not my favorite thing. And there's a storm right there. A beautiful storm. And our road to get to it is up there. Wow, this thing looks amazing. Still sitting here.
While this storm was pretty nice, its potential to produce tornadoes quickly faded as it became outflow dominant, meaning rain-cooled air was reaching the surface below the updraft. And besides that, it immediately crossed over into an area closed to travelers. What a year.
Talk to you in a few minutes.
Call you in a little bit.
All right. Yep. Bye.
Hey, can you hear me?
Turn right onto South
Yeah.
Dakota 34 West.
I hear
What's
you.
up?
Well, I've kind of lost the ability to catch this storm at this point. So I'm looking at the one over by Rapid. I can probably
Continue
catch
on
up
South
to.
Dakota 34 West,
Okay.
69 miles.
I'm just putting the GoPro on this one here, Midland. So.
How's it look?
I mean, yeah. Yep.
Holy crap! I just hit a cloud of bugs. Oh, this is great. Can you hear them? It's just like click, 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 click. They're all big too.
Oh, really?
New storms would form later back in the original target area near the Black Hills. So driving in a gigantic circle, I make my way back to Rapid City.
In half a mile, take exit 67 toward Box Elder, Ellsworth Air Force Base.
Where not one, but two powerful supercells would roll down the mountains and into the city. The first storm would smother the area in golf ball-sized hail, taking hours to melt away. The second supercell came just as the sun began to set, producing a fiery glow below an alien mothership storm swallowing up the whole city. The next day was a bit of a down day, touring the Black Hills and Badlands. Might as well hike into the park's backcountry for the night and sleep under a moonlit sky. It wasn't an easy task scrambling up loose gravel with 40 pounds of camping gear on my back. But it was absolutely worth it. A storm far to my west would cast its sun-kissed anvil high above me. I'd set up, eat some canned food, and just let the cameras capture all of the colorful textures and serene beauty of the Badlands.
Say a quick goodbye to the Badlands. All right, back on the trail.
It's time to set up near the Black Hills once again. Only this time, storms would fire up too early, and the moisture needed to produce a surface-based supercell simply wouldn't arrive in time. Instead, a derecho, a particularly intense and long-lived line of storms that unbelievably came all the way from the Four Corners region in southwest Colorado that morning, had made it all the way to western South Dakota. A local stopped by to say hi. Humorous dialogue ensued.
Wow. Why are you still out there? I will say it's going to be a little bit nasty driving home. Are you close by? Oh, okay.
I mean, the last house on the left here.
So you're fine. You're fine. It's not like you're driving into this. It's trying.
Don't encourage it. No encouragement. We do not encourage that, okay?
I'm with you. I'm with you. That's a cool view. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't have a lot of hope for that thing. Yeah, you can see, yeah, it's pretty white over there, so. We just love storm structure and anything like, this is why we do this. It's pretty.
It's also pretty.
Yeah, it is, absolutely.
A brief funnel appeared under one of the rapidly redeveloping updrafts. It too would do nothing interesting beyond that. darkness in there. Might have to go up over the hill. Yeah, I mean, if you lop off the left side of this, it looks like a raging supercell. This derecho's remnant outflow would meet up with the late to the party moisture in South Dakota and result in a top-tier shelf cloud and severe straight-line winds.
Yeah, so what we were talking about, the moisture axis that we're in right now is arcing to the southeast.
Okay.
The convection is getting really robust. To our left, it's going to start. We're going to be right in the middle of it soon.
All right.
20, 30 miles.
So it's moving. Wow, this feels good.
Yeah, the convection is moving northward, but the outflow is pushing it east. We are in that moist axis now, so this thing's going to go crazy. This thing right here, that's a legitimate supercell.
Staying ahead of this kind of storm requires highway speeds, and I'd run out of highway. As we lost the light of day and eastbound roads, it was time to bail into some shelter.
There we go.
And by shelter, I mean some workable light to film with and perhaps protection from any extreme hail. Horizontal wind-driven hail, however, is nearly impossible to stay out of. Winds in the area were measured well over 70 miles per hour. Not far from our location, a pickup and travel trailer would be tossed right off the highway we were just on. Storm chasing is hard on a vehicle. This is the second time I've rolled a vehicle odometer over 100,000 miles while storm chasing.
100,000. We did it.
June 26 provided another very slight risk for tornadoes, this time right on the foothills of the Colorado Front Range, from Denver to Colorado Springs. A storm would form just south of Mount Evans, traverse the Palmer Divide down to Colorado Springs. Chasing storms in this area virtually guarantees great storm structure, but any chance of a tornado in the area is an excuse to get out and watch. Tornadoes can be tall and highly visible in this environment. This storm didn't look like it was terribly likely to produce tornadoes, but it did at one point look like a flying spaghetti monster. It struggled to organize and never looked better than this. But this was worth every minute for the views. The storm gave up the ghost and spread its outflow across the landscape, producing a small dust storm. And with this cold blast of dust, spring storm chasing in 2020 had ended for me, leaving me empty-handed of tornadoes, but with vivid memories of extraordinary color, exotic lightning displays, and laminar cloud structure in a year that just didn't want to cough up any photogenic tornadoes any time I was around. But 2020 wasn't completely devoid of photogenic tornadoes. My buddy Mike Mars had an incredible encounter in Ashby, Minnesota later in July.
Wow!
Head over to his channel for some of the most intense tornado footage I've ever seen.
Oh my god.
This pandemic may have forever changed how I approach storm chasing going forward. In a lot of ways, this mode of chasing, sleeping in the car, photographing the stars and sprites at night, camping, saving a few bucks on motels, might actually be the new way to go for me, and of course, gave me a great opportunity to gratuitously emulate one of my favorite inspirations for this channel. I hope you've enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you out there.